All right. Okay, so here we are. This morning, I'd like to welcome Lucy Purcell, who's the director of the Agribusiness. Now, this is an agriculture and agribusiness recruiter and their strategy, agricultural agribusiness recruiter and strategy specialists. So it's a real pleasure to be speaking with you, Lucy. Maybe you can actually tell me a little bit more about what you do in the field of agriculture.
Okay, so thank you, Mel, and pleasure to be here. As Mel has outlined, we are specialists in the agribusiness and agricultural field, which means that we only do work in that specialist area of agribusiness, whether it's the business side, so supply chain, right through to consumer end, or in agriculture, it's more. And for both areas, it's more the technical management and I guess you could call it white collar areas. We don't do a huge amount of labour work. We occasionally help certain, say, farming clients if they're looking for people for full time, but we also don't really do casual work as well. So we're quite niche and we're quite targeted. So with the recruitment work that is apparent, but also with the strategy work that falls into that area naturally, it's project by project. We've done some fantastic work throughout the industry, helping people really find out their position in the industry. So strategizing before you actually develop a brand, for instance, or strategizing where your place is in the world for consumers, because that then, if you don't have that first initial piece sorted out, it's really hard to move forward as a business. We also have helped a lot of companies with setting up their structure as well, which brings in strategy as well as some of the recruitment and really working out, I guess, those organisational charts and being able to look at where the company wants to go in 2, 3, 5 year time and beyond, and also what is the purpose of setting up that business. So we've done a whole raft of things.
Oh, fantastic! Sounds like you really are experts in the area of agriculture and agribusiness.
We live and breathe
fantastic.
it. Live and breathe it, Mel.
And what would you say? I mean, everybody wants to know at the moment in terms of COVID-19 impacts on the industry. What would you say those have been on the industry of agriculture?
So, like the rest of the country and probably the rest of the world, March was a write-off. Everyone just went into shutdown and shock. A lot of the work that we were doing were paused. And so, it was frustrating, and not just for ourselves, but clients as well as candidates, because it affected people's ability to continue with their career. But in saying that, now, come June, July, now we're in July, we're starting to see those cogs turning again. So these types of roles that we do are full-time, as I mentioned, and they're generally because the business has opportunities to grow and they're looking for new skill sets, so to come and help the development of that growth. So as far as COVID's concerned, it certainly has had an impact, but it's kind of just put everything behind, 3-4 months.
Yeah.
And it will, and things will change, and we will have to do business differently as everyone's experiencing. So, yeah.
I mean, in some ways, I think if you look at positives of COVID, to do things differently, to have to suddenly be, use your skills and agility, but this is what everybody's doing, and it's no bad thing in a way to be able to advance the way you work with technology and so on. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say, and not only that, talking to clients that have really successful end-to-end businesses. So they say a lettuce organisation, a lettuce company that we work with, they have managed to retain their full-time people, which is really good, and a lot of their casuals as well. But the contractors are who they let go, and which that's where the shortfall was as far as the industry is concerned, as far as labour was concerned. But you also had people that were stuck in Australia and couldn't move. So their visas were extended, so they stayed. We have, as you know, Mel, we have people that come for short term for either holiday or for travel, or for, holiday or for study. So that did affect that market. But it seems to, and also in certain parts of Australia, a lot of agriculture and that labour force is dependent on season. So when it's colder, they don't need as many people. And of course, we've got Queensland, if you're allowed in, and other states that's warmer. So people do tend to migrate where the work is. So they would just, their visas were extended. A lot of the case.
So in terms, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, and that's true. I actually had helped out some clients who were from Vanuatu, and a lot of them were having their visas extended to continue to work labouring on some of the farms throughout Australia. I think some of them have been repatriated now on flights back to Vanuatu and elsewhere in the South Pacific too. But what would you say then in terms of the shortfall and where there might be a need for migrants in the area of agriculture?
Yeah, sure. So Australia does rely on people that migrate to Australia with certain skill sets, and especially people that have got technical skills, science-based, particularly in those areas. Certain growing techniques they may have. So bringing, so let's look at horticulture to give you an example. Horticulture wasn't, I guess, the growth area 15 years ago. So not a lot of students were studying horticulture. I did a part horticulture, part economics degree. But a lot of people focused on wheat, pulses and grains and livestock management and those sorts of areas. A lot of food production was focused within those areas, but over the last 15 years, we've had massive growth in the horticulture sector. So we really do need people that have certain skill sets, especially in management and especially technical skills and you've got to remember, so much of agriculture out on farm is also people management. Although Australia is highly automated compared to a lot of other countries. We don't have a workforce of 50 people out in the paddock. We use a tractor and GPS systems. So that's where a lot of those technical skills need to come into play. And then you've got the services that in the agribusiness space that actually service those industries. And that's where you see a lot of development and innovation occur. So that word innovation, that buzzword, we really rely on that in Australia. In Australia, our innovation hubs and our development in the ag tech world is getting better. We're supporting it, starting to support it a lot more. We look to Israel a lot for what is actually happening in the ag tech world, because they're a very dry continent. They do some amazing things with water. Water's a challenge in Australia. So we've got some really good synergies and partnerships with countries that are similar to Australia in growing conditions. So there's skills, if you're looking at, if you wanted to move to Australia, you wanted to target something, you would look at growing conditions within Australia. What are their markets? Where's the growth? How can my degree or my interest actually benefit a country that exports 80% of their food stuff? We have a surplus of food in Australia. We rely on export markets.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, agriculture is such a mainstay of Australia. When I attended the National Farmers Federation conference last year, I think it was in Canberra in October, I sat at a table with Wendy Duncan, who was an MP for Kalgoorlie-Boulder in Western Australia. And she really enlightened me on the world of agriculture. And she said to me that, if Australia goes into recession, I mean, obviously about, post-COVID economy at the moment, but if agriculture is having problems, and of course there have been issues, droughts and so on, in the last few years, then that has an enormous impact on the rest of the economy. I think a lot of people living in the cities, what have you, they just don't realise that actually.
Yeah, look, drought has been horrendous in Australia for the last few years, but it's not drought everywhere, and it's terrible. Don't believe me, I've lived through drought. I've lived on farm during a drought where we were waiting for water to turn up so we could actually just have a glass of water, so to speak. There's nothing in the tanks. It's pretty horrendous, and other countries have experienced that as well. We're not the only country, but we are very reliant on our rainfall. So that's where, and again, where I say people with certain skills that can help, say, breed plants that need less water or have certain growing capabilities that require less water. They're things that we really look at, whether it's in the plant world in particular. And also in our livestock industry as well. We've got cattle that survive a lot better in dry conditions. But then we've got other parts of Australia where it's wet all the time. So
yeah,
so we've got a massive diverse risk portfolio of land within Australia. I was also going to mention, just as far as degrees are concerned and some of the terminology, within a lot of areas of the world, a lot of science-based students, well, a lot of students in agriculture will study agricultural engineering. And then when they try to transfer across to Australia as a highly skilled candidate, they run into problems because we don't recognise the agricultural engineering unless it's got something to do with motors and tractors, and we see engineering as mechanical engineering and hydraulic engineering and those specialised areas, where a lot of students, depending on what they've majored in, will see it as agronomy or plant-based and science-based. So we actually see those candidates. The industry recognises it, but there is an issue with terminology with visas when you're being granted a visa, because we see those students as agricultural science type skilled candidates. That makes sense. If I explain that well. So it's just be aware of that, and when you're getting advice, you need to really make sure that your major and what you have majored in when you've studied is very clear and apparent.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lucy. That's we were talking earlier about this before starting this recording, weren't we? And I've had a client who's from Brazil who studied what's called agricultural engineering in Brazil, but in reality, actually, she would fit more into the area of agricultural consultant or scientist. So really, it is important to have those skill sets. Just on that note then, with regards to potential candidates, what do you see as, in terms of agricultural employers, what exactly are they looking for in terms of candidates, and what would it take, what would they need to succeed in the field in Australia?
To obtain those positions. So, yes. So there's a couple of things to remember. That there are generally roles that are hard to fill. So we look for migrants, and that they could be hard to fill because of location. So a lot of remote areas need highly technical skilled people to actually fulfill those roles. We've seen a lot of that in the almond industry in particular, because we had such massive growth so quickly, and other areas of horticulture. So that willingness to relocate and then actually settle in communities, in remote communities. So employers look for people that have had a similar experience, because there's nothing worse than going through the whole process and the expense of relocating someone, and then the partner and family, it doesn't fit. So that cultural fit's really important. Not so much they have to have the same culture, but understanding how remote living works in regional areas. That's certainly and I often say to people, if you can, have a holiday, go and have a look at these areas. It'll help you understand as well. Of course, a lot of people can't do that, but it is worth understanding how big Australia is and how most of our demographic lives around the coastline, where a lot of these developments and where we need skills are based in the interior. Yeah. So other skills, as I've talked about, technical skills, they're really needed. So the client, or the client that we work with, will be looking for specific areas of expertise. So if you're a livestock nutritionalist, then applying for a plant-based type position in agronomy is not going to work. Doesn't matter how amazing you might be able to transfer your skills, but it's not going to work in a lot of areas of actually trying to obtain visa or actually capturing the attention of the recruiter or the client. So there are things to note as well. We look for very specific skill sets when we're looking for people from overseas.
Yeah, right. I mean, you said, you're very specialized, and I mean, this is a very particular area of agriculture that you're working in, isn't it? And I think what you said about those people needing to understand the remoteness of the areas that they may be going into is very important. It's something we always talk to clients about, even if they're considering moving to another state or another city, which is smaller than, say, Sydney or Melbourne, or coming from overseas, from a large city, and then going to a place in Australia, especially if it's going to be a remote area, then there needs to be, it's good to actually be able to visit first.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so what about the types of, the types of projects then that you work on? You've talked about the clients, I know you've mentioned a little bit, but is there anything else you can tell us about the projects that you work on at the agribusiness?
In the strategy space?
Yes.
Yeah, so, it's been, we've worked with so we tend to form a team, so to speak, with other consultants that are highly specialised and will come in and take a certain piece. That's how we tend to operate there. That's relying on my business partner's expertise and myself, and then if we need other people to come and help us with certain pieces. We've been in the industry a long time, so we know who to reach out to then join the agribusiness component of those projects. We've done work for government. We've done work with directly with clients. Some really great and fun projects were looking at market access into other countries and trying to help with some of the free trade agreements that have opened up over the last few years, saying, okay, well, maybe the industries that can really benefit and might need some help are, say, beetroot into Japan, or depending on, because each country will have a list of what, say, vegetables or produce that is allowed as far as the free trade agreement is allowed. And then if there hasn't been an established market already put together, then we can help that specific industry move forward and open up some market access for them. So that's been really good fun. Some more internal type roles are helping with, as I said, working at the why. Why are you in business? Why would you look at developing a new product? Australian farmers in particular and manufacturing, they're really innovative. So they're always looking for the next new thing. I remember having a conversation with the company that started the whole kale craze in Sydney. There was a business down there, and they just said, yeah, we just worked out this very unappealing vegetable or leafy vegetable that no one really ate. And we're like, this can be really tasty with salt and just, stick it in the oven for a bit and make it crispy. And it just went bananas. I mean, it's really simple, but it's just having that ability to sort of think through what are the steps and working with companies to actually think through to make that step is what we really like doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, oh my gosh, I think about that. Kale, that's right. Suddenly, overnight, it just became this amazing thing. And now we all eat, kale
over summer.
And,
it was
just incredible. That's actually something that,
Yeah, it was about 2008, I think, 2009. And now it's, everyone talks about kale.
That's right. Yeah, there's so many health benefits, aren't there? Properties in that vegetable.
Yeah, so That's probably a good example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that I love about Australia in terms of, and in agriculture, something I really learned when increasingly in the time that we've been working more in the area of agriculture with regards to immigration. I have really learned what an amazingly innovative country Australia is. And I think that Australia needs to sell itself a bit more in that way on the world stage, actually.
Yes.
I really do. But I loved what you were saying about collaboration and connecting, what have you, and that's how I see our relationship. And I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to your skills and expertise and those of the agribusiness, and to point people in your direction if they're looking to place somebody in the area of agriculture. I mean, our name recently rebranded to MM Migration and Recruitment, but really we look to businesses like yourselves, like yours, Lucy, where you are the real experts in that industry. We are the experts in the field of immigration, and we can assist perhaps providing candidates for the placements that you have. So I just wanted to
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, absolutely.
Make that delineation and that kind of definition of our two brands. So I might just, unless there's anything else that you wanted to add, I might bring our conversation to an end and just say thank you so much, Lucy. Thanks very much for your time today and for sharing with us your expertise in the area of agriculture.
Thank you.
Really
no, I think the only point to finish up on is the whole world is in flux at the moment, and there will be changes. And I do know that our federal trade minister, is looking at opening up new free trade agreements with Australia. Particularly, there's some work being done. There's a whole list of them that are sort of pending, and then there's ones that are new, and there's the current list that we have. And some of those new areas will certainly bring about opportunities within Australia. So there could be opportunities for people within those areas or within those countries to actually come to Australia and help manage some of those relationships, because again, cultural understanding is really important. We recognise that. So there's plenty happening, and all I can say is we grow a surplus of food even in drought times because we have such a diverse portfolio of land in Australia. We've got desert, we've got rainforest, we've got it's cool climate, it's everything in between, and getting that technology right to be able to grow in all sorts of different areas is really what we need to do. And our R&D space is so important, and we really need to focus more on that. So we're going to need expertises that can actually support that. So that's where I see. And the government recognises, to get through COVID, what are the industries that can really pick up Australia's economy, and agriculture is one of them. Agriculture and agribusiness. So we have faith that we're in the right space.
Yeah, and I do too. With people like yourself working in the industry. And I mean, we always need hope, don't we? And right now, I think it's great to look to agriculture as one of those areas that's going to help Australia get through this and beyond. That inimitable Australian fighting spirit and optimism.
That resilience we all have to have if you're in agriculture, that's for sure. It's really, really needed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mel. Very much appreciate the opportunity to speak, and and I hope to everyone that sees this podcast that helps. The information can guide you a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Lucy. I'll just stop recording now.
Thank you.
Here we go. Thanks, everybody.